Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be talking all about translating an equation into a sentence. So before we get going, if you guys could please give it a shot, I would love it if you guys would try the two problems at the top of the page. Pause your video now and try them. All right, guys, answers are up. If you look at the first one now, if you didn't see this, I forgot to mention this. I'm sorry, guys. I missed this word and, so make sure you add that in when you solve this. But as we read this first one, it says 14 less than the product of a number set and 7 is no more than 8. So our first step on this one was identifying kind of where our sign of the problem was going to be. And that's where we got this first part of here. If we see the is, that word is our tip off that that's going to be where our either our inequality or our equal sign is. This one is going to be our inequality because it says is no more than. That means it can be equal to or less than. So this is the symbol that we should have chosen here. That's our less than or equal to symbol. For the rest of this though, the leading up to that, it says 14 less than the product of a number and 7. Now remember, this phrase less than always switches the order. So instead of 14 minus anything else, that tells me that we're going to have something minus 14. Now, what are we subtracting from 14? Or subtracting 14 from? It says the product of a number and 7. Product is, remember, another word for multiplication. So that's where our 7n comes from. On number 2, it says 20 is less than. Remember, the is always lets you know what kind of symbol we have. If it was just an is, that would be our equal sign, but it says is less than. So we're going to use our less than symbol. So 20 is less than, so the kind of builds the left side of our equation for us. On the other side, we have our inequality. It says 3 times the difference of a number and 2. Now remember this phrase, the difference of, kind of includes parentheses around the things that we're taking the difference of. And remember, difference is another word for subtraction. So it just means we have our 3, and in parentheses, we have that n minus 2. Now, basically, we're kind of continuing what we did in our last video, and instead we're kind of switching things around. Instead of me giving you the sentence here and you constructing the inequality, today we're going to be kind of going the opposite direction. I'm going to be giving you that inequality, and your job is going to be to actually write the sentence that corresponds to it. So as we read this, one of the first things that is really helpful to do is just read out whatever it is that we're trying to translate. So for this one here, we have 2 times 5 plus t in parentheses, and then is greater than 8. Now you have a lot of different ways that you could do this. There's a lot of words that mean multiply, a lot of words that mean addition, but we want to kind of take this piece by piece so that we don't forget everything. Remember, if there's nothing in between, we do have to actually mention that multiply. So that's going to be how I start this. I'm going to say 2. Oopsies. And your numbers, guys, you don't have to actually write in words. You can keep those as numbers. But I'm going to say take 2 times. Now, especially because I have these parentheses here, there's always one kind of phrase that always tips us off as to when to use those. And that is when we have the sum of or difference of. This phrase right here is how we actually get those parentheses without actually having to say it. So for us, it depends on what you're doing. Because we have an addition sign in here, that tells me that we're going to choose the sum of. So it's 2 times the sum of whatever 2 things we're adding. So we're taking the sum of 5 and a number t. So a 5 and t. And now we get to choose which sign we're going to use. Now this sign right here is our greater than symbol, but you can use any of the phrases that also mean greater than. You could say is not less than, or you could use your, basically anything that would kind of fall in that category. I'm going to use this is greater than. And then 8 is going to be how I finish that sentence. All right, moving on to part B. For this one, we say a divided by -2 minus 10 is less than or equal to 11. So sometimes saying it out loud actually gives you kind of a hint as to what we're actually going to put down as the sentence. And a lot of what I just said is exactly what we're going to write down. We're going to start by taking A divided by -2. Now, again, you could say this a lot of ways. You could say the quotient of A and -2. You could just say A divided by -2. Really, any of those would be fabulous. I'm going to say A divided by 2. So A divided by 2. And the next thing we're doing is we are subtracting 10 from that. So subtracted by 10. Subtracted by 10. And then we're going to include our sign. So is less than or equal to. I'm going to bring it down here. Is less than or equal to 11, which is on the other side. So what I want you guys to do, if you feel like you're getting the hang of this, pause your video now, and I want you to try the next two problems that pop up here. So try part C and part D. All right, I have my two sentences. Now this is where definitely you want to check with your teacher, just because what you have might be different than what I have. For part C though, it says we have 10 is less than 2 times the number C decreased by 5. Now, as light, again, you could use a different phrase other than decreased by. That was the phrase that I chose to represent my subtraction here. But there's a lot of words that you can use in place of the is less than. Now, just a key note about that, please make sure you have that is in there. If you just say less than, you're implying that you're using subtraction and not using an inequality sign. The is the word that differentiates between the two. So just make sure you have whatever sign you used or whatever phrase you use to represent the less than symbol, make sure you have that is as part of this, okay? Same thing if you look at the next one, example D. Here, however you chose to say 7 times the number B, because that is exactly what we were doing. We were multiplying. So you could have done the product of 7 and B, 7 multiplied by B, 7 times the number B. All of those phrases would have been fabulous to represent that. But again, when you're going to choose the symbol to match the sign, make sure you have that is. So I chose to do is not less than, which means greater than or equal to. But you could have also just said 7 times the number B is greater than or equal to the rest of this. So whatever phrase you did, as long as it was one of the ones that represented your greater than symbol, then you are wonderful, okay? Now, there are some you try nows down at the bottom. If you want to pause your video now and give them a shot, see how you do. All right, answers are up. So for your first one, for 7 times W subtracted by 10, again, as long as you use some phrase that represent the subtracted by, so decreased by 10, if you said 10 less than 7W, that would have been fabulous. All of those technically mean the same thing. So make sure check with your teacher, see if you got something that is equivalent to this. And as well as along those same lines, I use the is greater than symbol. But again, if you chose something else that greater than or equal to symbol, excuse me, I forgot all of that. I chose that phrase. As long as you chose a phrase that also means is greater than or equal to, then you are also correct as well. Number 2, just be really careful because we have these parentheses here. So when we take our 2 times, we want to make sure we use that phrase, the sum of. All right, so 2 times the sum of X and a number 17. And then again, kind of like the one before this, I chose to use is less than. As long as you guys also chose a phrase that means the same thing as less than, then you are fantastic. Okay. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you.